Okay, grinders, here we go again. So I've been recommended to check out this video from Language Simp. Apparently it came out a while ago. It's called Why I Don't Like Esperanto. You can probably guess why I was told to check out this video, because I am a fluent Esperanto speaker. I don't know much about this guy. I do know from like indirect references that he makes like funny videos, so I'm looking forward to seeing something that's funny as opposed to like educational. But I figured I would respond because I'm very curious to see what he would say. Now, to give you guys a little bit of an example of Esperanto, what it actually sounds like. I'll speak a little bit right now. I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson, and I'm going to speak it in the Esperanto, and I want you guys to drop a comment below and let me know what you think it sounds similar to, obviously apart from Esperanto. And I'm more interested to hear from those who don't speak the language. Esperanto estis lingvo kiu estis kreita en 1887. La homo kiu kreis Esperanton nomiĝis Zamenhof. Zamenhof decidis krei Esperanton por ke li povu helpi al aliaj homoj por interkomunikiĝi. Do tiutempe Zamenhof loĝis en Pollando, sed Pollando mi credis estis parto de Rusio, sed kompreneble ne plu. Okay, so let's watch this video.
Saluton, bonvenon al mia kanalo. Mia nomo estas LingvoSimp.
Okay, that was... What is he doing? Okay, that just caught me totally off guard. His Esperanto was actually pretty good then, except for bonvenon. He just mispronounced one word.
That is the first and last time you'll ever see me speaking Esperanto. I've had Esperanto activists beg me to not make this video for a long time, but I refuse to be silenced.
Okay, I'm gonna stop him right there. That's a load of crap. They would have begged him to make this video. If you've ever met like an actual Esperanto speaker, like a hardcore one, I'm not talking like just a speaker, I'm talking about someone who likes to really push others to learn the language. They're the type of person that would be pushing him to make a video, not to not make a video.
It's pretty well known that I'm not a huge fan of the language, and I think it's time I finally explain why. I want to start this off by saying that I don't personally dislike anyone who learns or speaks Esperanto.
That's good. Otherwise we'd have a problem.
There are obviously great and talented people in the community, and it's not my fault that they're brainwashed. If I had a girlfriend who told me, "Kevin, I'm learning Esperanto," I'd respect her decision. I'd break up with her and date her father, but I'd respect her free will to go to the dark side.
Well, maybe her father's really good looking. Like, I don't judge, man. Whatever you're into.
For those of you who still have your innocence, Esperanto is a constructed language, or conlang, created by Polish eye doctor L.L. Zamenhof in the year 1887.
Wait, he just said 1887. Is that an American thing? Because in Australia we'll say 1887. I've never heard someone say 1887. Is he just like doing the whole... he's playing around with the language, or is that actually how Americans say dates? I'm really curious. Let me know in the comments.
Modern day, Esperanto is spoken in... Esperanto is spoken in... Esperanto is spoken in... It's not spoken anywhere. Esperanto's...
Oh, he's correct about that. It's not spoken in any particular country. You will find communities for Esperanto speakers all over the place. There's actually like a town in Germany where you will find a bunch of Esperanto restaurants and stuff like that, and you can find like pretty much all the signs are in Esperanto and things. Obviously there's the motto over in Japan. They've got their own little communities, and then there's communities over in South America and all sorts of places. You can find speakers if you want to find them.
Is about as useful as learning Jamaican patois in preparation for your trip to Tokyo.
I've heard this one before where people say, oh, it's about as useful as, you know, X situation. But I've always seen it like this. If I learned French right now, I live in Australia, I pretty much have no use for this language. Like, for French itself. Sure, I could watch French films, but I could watch Esperanto films, you know? Like, sure, maybe there's more French films, but like, there's plenty of films I can watch. I don't need to learn French to, like, watch films type of thing. But I've actually found Esperanto to be insanely helpful. I've traveled around the world, gone to multiple places, got free tours, stayed in places, all sorts of stuff. I've even built an entire business using Esperanto and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars doing various rounds of seed investment purely in Esperanto. So it's not like it's useless. It's like anything. You just gotta find a use for it.
Like normal languages like Gujarati and Albanian, Esperanto didn't spawn naturally and develop over time. Instead, Mr. Zamenhof went full Minecraft creative mode and poofed it into existence out of thin air. Zamenhof specifically made Esperanto to be the international language that would foster world peace and unite the nations in a common brotherhood. He wanted it to be everyone's second language, therefore he designed it so that anyone could learn it in just a few months. Sounds great, right? Well, it's not. So today I'm going to give you my top 5 reasons for why I'm not a fan of Esperanto. Number one, it's just not a good international language. The idea of having a global language that everyone could learn regardless of their native language is really awesome, but Esperanto is a bad choice.
I just want to point out one thing. He's talking about the fact that Esperanto is meant to be an international second language. This was, yes, why Esperanto was created, but it's not why the vast majority of people actually speak Esperanto to this day. So a lot of people speak Esperanto for different reasons. Like, I speak it just because, well, it was the first language I learned. I wanted to prove to myself that I could actually learn another language. And then I just got really interested in the culture, the people, and made friends in the community. And then obviously I built my business and stuff like that. So it's like, I've really not ever cared about this too much, about the whole international thing. And I've met families that are multi-generational Esperanto speakers who really don't care about this. It's just like their family language type of thing. So this is the original intention, and it's also why a lot of Esperanto speakers like learn the language to this day, but this is like not everyone. There's like 50% maybe.
First of all, for being the proclaimed international language, it looks a bit too Eurocentric in my...
Okay, so this is, what's the word for this? This is presentism. This is where you take something from the past, where it was true at the time, and you apply it to the present. So when Esperanto was created back in 1887, the international language was actually French, and then to a degree Latin as well. So if you look at it at that stage, for all the superpowers of that time, it was a very international language. It fit perfectly for what was considered the international world at that time. Now, obviously, compared to today's standards, where now English has taken over and now you've got Chinese coming up, then Esperanto is no longer what you would call the perfect international language because, well, it was created during a time that doesn't exist anymore. And this is probably the problem with ever trying to create a true international language, because by the time you create it and it becomes popular and people actually use it, it will no longer be fit for purpose in a sense, because the vast majority of the world has probably moved on by that point. So with things like AI and ChatGPT, the need for an international language is actually pretty much dropped off. And in fact, we are probably at the pinnacle of English as the international language right now, because moving forward to the future, more and more translations is going to be done by machines, and less people are actually going to need to learn English even. I don't think we're ever going to truly have an international language.
My opinion. It's written in the American alphabet, and the vocab and grammar are specifically way too similar to what you'd find in Romance languages. And if I wasn't a hyperpolyglot gigachat, I'd probably mistake it for Romanian.
I can see why he would mistake it for Romanian, but it's actually a lot more similar to Latin. If you put it up side by side with Latin, you'd be surprised how similar it is.
Therefore, people outside of the sphere of influence of Europe are going to have a much harder time learning it. Imagine me...
And that's true, because when it was created, it's a product of its time. It was the international, like, it was fit for purpose at the time, but now, obviously, China is a superpower, and then probably 50 years from now, India will be a superpower. Who knows? The Middle Eastern world with Arabic might become superpowers.
Forced two dudes to study Esperanto at the same time. Dude 1 is Juan Pablo Martinez from Texas, and Dude 2 is Ming from Wuhan, China. Let's look at how to say the word world in both Juan and Ming's languages. In Spanish, world is mundo, while in Chinese it's
世界.
And the
He just used Google Translate then. 世界. Okay, so, well, I know he doesn't speak Chinese now, so that's cool.
Esperanto word is mondo. Who's gonna have an easier time learning that? Yeah, I'm not sure either. What about the word person? In Spanish, it's persona, while in Chinese, it's
人.
And in Esperanto, the word is persono.
Funnily enough, some of the biggest, most active Esperanto-speaking groups actually exist in China. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when I went to China, the Chinese government actually gives funding and support to the local Esperanto associations there. So I went to Chinese International Radio, where they had like an entire floor of a government department, which was basically just all about doing translation and news and all this type of stuff in Esperanto. So it's kind of crazy that it's popular in these countries like China and Japan. And when I say popular, I mean relatively to other countries. I don't mean like overall. So it's kind of popular in countries where you would least expect it to be popular, and it's usually not due to the international nature of it. So in China, the Chinese government gives it support and funding because they see it as a means to promote communism. In Japan, it has a lot of support because it's linked to a religious belief system there called Omoto, where they spoke about Esperanto being, I think, the language of heaven at one point. Don't quote me on that. Then in South America, among spiritualists, they have religious texts or something that are written in Esperanto. So it's popular in these different areas for reasons that are totally unrelated to it being created as an international language. So it's I actually find it fascinating to find why people speak it.
I think you're starting to get the point. Juan's living life on easy mode recruit difficulty, and Ming has yet to even learn the alphabet. Some might call this European bias, and
the alphabet thing's not really that hard for the Chinese, funnily enough, because they learn pinyin anyway. Obviously, there's certain sound combinations which are hard, certain sound combinations for English speakers as well. In fact, it's easy mode for anyone who's from Poland or Eastern Europe, basically.
and thus the language itself racist, but I'm not going to go that far. Esperanto is racist! Oh, that woman just said it, who is absolutely not me, so if you're going to get mad at anyone, get mad at her. Number 2, it's...
I don't get that argument. How's it racist? Because... No, I don't get that argument. I'm just gonna skip it.
Not easy enough to learn. Esperanto is certainly not the hardest language I've ever seen. I mean, just from researching a little bit for this video, I accidentally got to B1 in it. The grammar is pretty easy, as it has regular verb conjugations, simple prepositions, and it has no grammatical gender. However, it's also an agglutinative language, which I know nothing about, so I'm just gonna assume that it's impossible. But my real problem with it is that it just has too many words.
I'm guessing he's making a joke.
In my opinion, a global language constructed so that people could easily learn it should not have 9,000 root words or whatever.
Okay, so what he's actually talking about is a debate that exists within the Esperanto-speaking community itself, because originally Esperanto had a very small stock of words. And what happens after like 120 years of use is you get people coming in with different language backgrounds using words from their own language, and then it makes its way into Esperanto. A great example of this is there is 2 ways to say chopsticks in Esperanto. The traditional way to say this is simply bastonetoi, which means small sticks. But due to Japanese influence on Esperanto, the most common way to say it now is hashioi. Why do we have this extra word? Well, because the Japanese imported it, and now we just use it.
With a bajillion different forms, like Esperanto. It should only have a few hundred words which describe what's most important in life. And that's why I think...
So as I stated, what happens with time is the language grows. It's pretty much unavoidable once you start getting numbers.
I think Tokipona should be the international language instead. It only has about 140 words.
So here's another language I speak, Tokipona, so I can talk about this one as well. Tokipona is starting to suffer from the same thing Esperanto is. So Tokipona started with a very small word base, and now it's growing. I guarantee in 100 years it's going to be substantially larger than it is now.
Which describe the most crucial things and ideas that make up the universe. And
also, Tokipona is too small to be an international language. The problem is you have to cut down concepts so much that you can't talk with too much precision. I know there's going to be Tokipona speakers who go against me saying that, but I've learned the language, I speak it, I can read texts in it. It's true. It's just the simple matter of the fact. Tokipona has to grow if it wanted to be an international language.
And it's a lot more neutral, borrowing from all sorts of different languages on Earth.
So it's a much more neutral according to today's standards because, well, Tokipona is like 15 years old or something. So 100 years from now, we shall see.
Pronunciation also isn't just automatically easy for everyone. According to this Wikipedia article, Zamenhof said that Italian should be used as a model for Esperanto pronunciation. Oh, so let's make an international language and base the pronunciation off of a real language, because that's not biased at all. And specifically, we'll choose the language where you have to sing and throw hand signs around just to be understood, like, io parlo italiano, ma non parlo molto bene, gorlami.
Well, that made sense at the time because the international language was French, but the respected language was Latin. And what was closest to Latin was Italian. So it's just a common sense thing. Also, the vast majority of people who adopted Esperanto early came from Western Europe.
Noises would be easy for Stefano from Milano to pronounce, but they would not be easy for a random monolingual Russian in Siberia or a random farmer in Pyongyang to pronounce.
From my understanding, Russians don't actually have a problem with Esperanto. In fact, it's easy mode for them.
Number 3, it's poisoning the minds of our youth. Esperanto sucks the life and soul out of unsuspecting and innocent new language learners who don't know any better. When someone enters this hobby, they're bombarded with hundreds of useful and worthy languages all competing to be selected and learned. Then you've got the devil, or...
I'm going to go completely against him on this point. I would not be speaking multiple languages today if it wasn't for Esperanto, because when I went through high school, I studied Japanese in high school and I did 4 years, and by the end of the 4 years, I could literally count and I knew random words, and I felt like I couldn't speak any language and languages wasn't for me. And then years later, I was like, you know what? I really want to see if this is something I can do, because I'm always the type of person who's like, can I do this? Like, can I actually be the smart person for once? So I started looking up languages to learn, and naturally I was like, you know what? I want to learn an easy language. And that's when I stumbled across Esperanto. And I figured, well, if I can't learn a language that's designed to be easy, then clearly I'm an idiot, okay? So I tried to learn it. I succeeded. That gave me the massive boost, and then I was like, whoa, I'm a god, man. I'm gonna go learn Mandarin Chinese. Thank God I didn't start with that, because then there would be no hope in hell. So Esperanto's like the marijuana of the language world before you get to the hard crack, which is the other languages. So it's kind of like the gateway drug into the language community. So I don't see how it's a negative. In fact, I know many people who started with Esperanto and then 10 years later ended up with a myriad of other languages simply due to that one good first experience.
Or the wolf in sheep's clothing, otherwise known as Esperanto, waiting quietly in the corner to swoop the unsuspecting language learner into its trap. He says, "Hey buddy, I'm the easiest, most international language ever. Join my community. It's not a cult. Learn me. Learn me. Learn me." I've seen it time and time again. A new language learner comes in my Discord.
I hear this all the time where people say, oh, it looks like a cult. This is just basically anyone who gets really into something. They make whatever they're really into look like a cult. Like right now, my interest is Chinese, and I'll pretty much find a way, any way, to turn a conversation towards something to do with the Chinese language. And people look at me like, what are you, some type of fanatic? Are you paid by the Communist Party of China or something? No, I'm not. Although I am open to money, People's Republic of China, I am available for sponsoring. But realistically, it just means you're really interested in something. I went through this phase. Now Esperanto is just one of my languages that I speak, and it's pretty much the same with anyone who gets into a language at the start.
Gordon says,
"Language Simp, you inspired me to learn languages. Tell me, what language should I learn?"
and I always tell them to learn something useful like German or Maltese, and then they scurry away. But then I see them a few weeks later brainwashed with an Esperanto profile pic telling me,
Esperanto is the future.
Okay. This does happen a lot. So when someone learns Esperanto, they make massive progress and they're like, oh my god, I can actually speak a language. This is amazing. And then they go change their profile pic and do shit like that. That is so true. Bro, that is so true. Okay, I'll give him that. In fact, if you look at the oldest video on my channel, it's me talking about Esperanto, and I'm that guy, okay? I'm that guy. But it's like anything, bro. You go through your emo mode and you grow out of it. But, yeah, okay.
Please believe me.
Submit to Zamenhof.
Number 4, I don't like...
Submit to Zamenhof. I've got the best story, okay? So, I should make this a completely separate video, but I just got to inject in here. So, we've got an Esperanto house here in Sydney. It's like a community hall. You can go there and there's a little painting of Zamenhof hanging up on the wall. I know, that makes it seem cultish, but funniest thing ever. I was making a video once there, and one of my other mates who also speaks Esperanto, he decided to start making out with the painting. So we're filming this and laughing our ass off. And the next day we get an email from a member of the association saying that we should basically be publicly flogged and beaten and kicked out of the association for this. So naturally what we did is we went back and we filmed the scene again, and it kind of turned into almost this really weird ass porno. But anyway, that is a story for another day.
The name. If we're gonna make an international language that everyone's gonna use, can we at least name it something interesting? What on earth is an Esperanto? It could have been named Spoogity Doogity.
So Esperanto simply means one who hopes. Esperdi mean to hope. Anto is a person who does the verb. So it wasn't actually originally called Esperanto. I think it was called just international language or something like that. But that's not exactly the best for marketing, international language. In fact, it still has that name in Chinese now. 世界语, which means world language. So that's the word for Esperanto in Chinese.
Or loobity boobity, or even something sleek like Chet or Doc, or more appropriately, Spanish too. Or Italian light, or f*** it, let's just call it European. But
no, in that case, if you want to name it after a language, I would call it Latin improved or something.
Instead, we just had to settle on a name that sounds like it should be a city in Ecuador. Number 5, we already have an international language. American is the international language for a reason, and we worked hard all around the world.
So this goes back to my first point where, when Esperanto was created, American wasn't the international language. Who knows what will be the international language in the future? from what I've heard, America, there's a lot of people that speak Spanish there.
To get that title. We deserve it. We invented phones, computers, cars, freedom, healthcare, democracy, and concrete. Did I forget to say healthcare? But seriously, if we're going to try to convince the world to adopt a lingo as convoluted and Eurocentric as Esperanto, everyone might as well just continue learning American. It's already studied all across the multiverse, and it has simple grammar and phonology rules with no exceptions. Yeah, those are my reasons. Keep in mind that everything in this video was just my opinion. So to summarize, Esperanto is a classic case of great idea, awful execution. Let me know what language you think should be the global lingua franca in the comments, and join my Discord if you want to debate me about this.
I don't think there needs to be an international language anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, but with the advance in AI, I honestly don't think there will ever be an international language. I know the Esperanto speakers who follow me are going to be like, oh, that's terrible, why are you saying that? It's just the truth of the matter. With technology advancing at the rate it is now, there will probably never be an international language, and those languages such as English, which are dominant due to the fact that they're like economically powerful, are going to slowly lose their position, and what we're going to see is like basically a multipolar world with multiple massive languages having control over various regions. Who knows? Maybe English will become dominant if Elon Musk conquers Mars and establishes, you know, freaking Ellen City and makes English the international language there. We shall see. Okay, well that's pretty much it. Everything here is pretty standard. I've heard it many times before. And I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, well then you better be praying at the feet of Zamenhof because I will find you.